So we find ourselves at the release of another DC Comics movie, one that sort of exists in limbo and has to do with a character that's based on a color. And no, it's not Green Lantern, not Black Adam, and not Booster Gold. Instead, this time we're talking about Blue Beetle. Blue Beetle is sort of a secondary DC Comics character that doesn't come out into the spotlight very often. However, lately with the fad of introducing lesser known characters into big name movies, Blue Beetle seemed like a great option. It feels normal that Warner Brothers would want to bring in some fresh blood to take the reins of these new films. So in this movie, Jaime Reyes comes back from college to find that his family is in financial straits, and long story short, in an attempt to get them all jobs at a local tech company called Cord Industries, he encounters an alien mechanism called the Scarab, which grafts itself to his back and thus his spinal cord, and merging their thought patterns so they become a sort of symbiotic relationship. Think sort of like Eddie Brock and Venom. Since the Scarab is alien and technology, it can use the equivalent of nanotechnology, I guess, to create whatever Jaime can think of. The majority of the plot of this movie is centered around Jaime and the Scarab learning how to operate as a single being, all while rescuing his kidnapped family from Susan Sarandon and all the other bigwigs at Cord, trying to get the Scarab for their own use. I really didn't have any expectations going into this movie because, like I mentioned a minute ago, it sort of exists in a weird state right now. Where, yeah, Warner Brothers wants to release the movie, but they don't know if it's going to be used in the continued DC cinematic universe. Only if maybe it does well in the box office, or it's critically received well amongst the fans, or if Warner Brothers even likes the movie. We as an audience really have no idea what the future holds for Blue Beetle. That being said, I do think that this movie was a really fun popcorn superhero movie. And as much as I'm the biggest advocate for superheroes as cinema, something needs to be said for the lack of entertaining superhero movies lately. Everything seems so concerned with building this larger universe or connecting it to other characters that it sort of forgets the heart and soul foundation of what makes a superhero movie. Blue Beetle, on the other hand, takes that foundation and runs with it. This is a really fun comic book movie that sticks to the superhero formula while never really pushing that formula onto the audience too much. It never feels like it's overbearing. It never feels like it's trying to stick to that formula specifically. It hits all the right notes. You have an entertaining and relatable main character, you have the fun side characters in the Reyes family, you have a convincing villain in Susan Sarandon and her use of the OMAC system, and you have some really solid development and interactions between the main character and the villain, and how that main character learns how to become the hero. So with all the initial stuff out of the way, we can really get into what I liked about this movie. First and foremost, Zola Maridueña was a great casting for Jaime Reyes. He does a great job in this movie of giving off the sort of careless young guy attitude. He just graduated from college, he's back to spend a great summer home with his family, and nothing can really bring him down until it does. Zola does great in portraying his emotions in different scenes to make the character always feel relatable to the viewer, no matter what kind of background that viewer comes from. There's always something about the Reyes family, whether it be Jaime or Uncle Rudy, that any sort of audience member can see themselves in. And I think that that is partially what makes the character of Blue Beetle, at least in this iteration, something that's so enjoyable to watch. A common comparison of Blue Beetle is that he's sort of the Spider-Man character of the DC cinematic universe. And yeah, that fits. He's the young kid that just left school, cracks jokes all the time, has a bit of an attitude when he needs it, but can seriously crack down and defeat the supervillain when something larger than himself is at stake. And, if you want to take it a step further, similar to Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Spider-Man Homecoming, he chooses not to defeat the villain fully at the end of the movie, and yet help them become a rehabilitated version of themselves, which, to me, is more heroic than pounding your enemy into the dirt. If we're talking about the Reyes family though, George Lopez as Uncle Rudy absolutely stole the show, and it's not even close. Every time he was on screen, I was in stitches laughing. He is such an enjoyable character in this film. And to be totally honest with you, I was a little surprised when he didn't take the Uncle Ben archetype of the family member that has to die for Blue Beetle to realize that he should be the hero in this story. Although, when you think about it, Uncle Rudy, Uncle Ben, might have been a little bit on the nose. Something about Susan Sarandon as the rich entitled villain in this movie really hit it home for her acting ability. I mean, Janet would never, but Louise? Just maybe. From a more technical standpoint, the practical suit that Jaime wears as Blue Beetle is gorgeous as always. I've mentioned this before, DC Comics movies rarely miss with suit design. Obviously, yeah, there's some CGI enhancements, like when he's flying into space, but I mean, when he's just walking around, that's a practical suit. Xolo is wearing that on set. If I could get my hands on one of those, let me tell you. The fight choreography was awesome. It was eye-catching and exciting at every turn, especially when Jaime let the Scarab take over and control the suit slash body slash person slash I'm not really sure, and that provided for some crazy actions that Blue Beetle was able to perform on various enemies that he was fighting throughout the movie. The Ted Kord technological inspiration for Blue Beetle, as he was Blue Beetle before Blue Beetle had the Scarab, was really cool. Everything in it really reminded me of Night Owl from Watchmen, especially the flying beetle machine that they were in looked exactly like the flying owl from Watchmen. Couple that with George Lopez thinking that Batman was a fascist, maybe we've got a little bit of inspiration. Finally, I just want to touch on something that I briefly mentioned earlier, and that is the future of Blue Beetle. While yeah, I do still think it's a little bit of a long shot for Gunn and Safran to include Blue Beetle in the future of the DCU, I wouldn't really be upset if they did. Obviously, you watched this video, you know my take on the movie by now, but Jaime Reyes is honestly a super well-written character. I mean, the script in this movie was solid. Like I said, it sticks to the superhero formula and it hits all the beats. If Blue Beetle exists as a solo film and nothing ever goes forward with it, that's fine. It was a good movie, it's an entertaining movie, and Jaime has a lot of cool interactions with the characters in it. But just think for a second. Think about Superman Legacy. Think about all the castings you've heard of. Mr. Terrific, Hawkgirl, Guy Gardner. Think of all the incredible interactions that Blue Beetle could have with these characters. Think of when Spider-Man Homecoming came out, and you were thinking to yourself, how many characters would I love to see Spider-Man finally talk to after years of being locked in the Sony prison? DC doesn't have that prison problem with Blue Beetle. Whatever movie comes next after Superman Legacy, Xolo Maridueña's Blue Beetle can interact with Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner right off the bat. Think about that for a second before you write your angry emails to Warner Brothers, telling them that you want Blue Beetle in the future of the DC universe. And if you don't write that email, because I want him in there. So until next time, thanks for watching.